You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Wisdom Wednesday presented, of course, by DraftKings. Wednesday means we already have this week's college draft with Emory, which was fantastic. Emory going over his top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL draft. You do not want to miss the college draft podcast this week. We also already have the Even Money betting podcast posted. Fascinating to hear from Steve Fezzik the value that is being provided right now by SixScore.com and the edge that that's giving people knowing the injury edge in these games. It's crazy. Highly encourage you to check out either one of those, however you listen to this show, or youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. We will have the Fantasy Feast podcast today. Several new offensive coordinators that we still need to get into with Joe Dolan on the Fantasy Feast. What does he think of Kellen Moore in Philadelphia? What does he think of Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh, among others? Definitely check out the other shows, especially since I'm no longer 5 days a week here on this show. Pick up another show or two for Tuesday or Friday or whenever. When you are missing me, that's Ross Tucker. Most of you know that. My social media handle personally is at Ross Tucker NFL. Biggest one I've had lately is about pierogies, if that tells you anything about me and my life and my social media platform. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. And the cool thing about following us, or me, but especially us on social media, every show, if you ever see me like taking notes, I take notes of like the 2 or 3 things that I think that the other person says that are the most interesting. And then we cut those clips up, we put them on social media so that you can see what we think is the most interesting stuff, the best of the best, which is why you should be following us at Ross Tucker NFL, at Ross Tucker Pod. I cannot believe it's already Wednesday, which means tomorrow we will have winners already. That's someone that spreads the word in any way. Just make sure you send me that email, ross@rosstucker.com. Maybe you rated and reviewed the show. Maybe you went ahead and you did a quote post on Twitter, or you replied and commented on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. It all counts. Just let me know. Let me see it, and I'll know for sure that you did it. Same with taking advantage of any of our sponsors. You guys know how much I love when you send me a picture of Labatt or DiGiorno, or when you get that free estimate at westshorehome.com/Ross. You're pretty much guaranteed to be the winner, even if you just get the free estimate at westshorehome.com/Ross. A lot to get to today as it relates to the Combine, some news about Peter King. I got a story for you guys in a little bit, but we wanted to change things up a little bit. I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Well, I know we primarily talk about the NFL on this show, but it is the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, which means it doesn't have to only be the NFL, especially this time of year. And don't worry, I've got a lot to say later on in the show about some of these guys getting released, like Shaq Barrett, Laken Tomlinson, Jonnu Smith, some of the guys that have been signed. Interesting stuff to note about Peter King and Marvin Harrison Jr. But I want to bring on a guy that I find everything that has to do with Australia and football to be fascinating on a lot of different levels, because I've been there. I've seen a rugby match in Australia. His name is Paul Grzadka, and he's a presenter and a producer for National Rugby League. I want to just start with this, Paul, okay?
Yeah.
If I went down to Australia and I said football, what do they think when I say football? Because in my head, there's like American football, NFL, there's soccer. They could maybe think it was soccer. And then there's rugby league, rugby union, Aussie rules. Like if I just said football in Australia, what would they think I'm talking about?
It depends which state you're coming to. Yeah, exactly. Look, here in New South Wales and Queensland, we play rugby league, which is a lot of your viewers might have heard of rugby. And I look at rugby league and I say, hey, if you came to North America for the first time and someone took you to a Canadian football game, you'd go, hey, it's pretty good. But then if they took you to the NFL, you'd go, this is great. And that's the same idea when you're talking about rugby league. You're just talking about something that's just got that little bit extra, the athleticism, the way the game's played. You'll really get to see those skills shown on the big stage.
Okay. So, man, I got a lot of questions now. When I went to Australia right after I retired from the NFL, I saw the Sydney Waratahs play.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is
my
rugby.
wife and I, we went to New Zealand and Australia, and in Australia we went to Sydney, and we saw the Tars. I'll never forget, the ref evidently made a bad call, and some guy stood up and said, "You, sir, are a goose. You are," and I had never heard that before, and everybody laughed, thought it was great. I had never heard that before. Are the Tars rugby league or rugby union?
Rugby union, and I've got to say, there's only 3 games where the equivalent New South Wales play each year, and we call it State of Origin, but they're our greatest games of the year. So next time you come, I'll make sure I get you a ticket. Come to a State of Origin game. They call it mate versus mate, state versus state, hate versus hate. So it's one of those things that you got to experience, but I'm telling you, State of Origin, there's nothing better.
So what's the difference between rugby league and rugby union?
As I said, there's a few different rules, and I think if you look at like the Canadian Football League and American Football League, knowing that, one's 3 downs, one's 4 downs, little things like that are different. On the surface, it's going to look the same. They're wearing similar uniforms, they've got similar sized ball, they're playing on the same sort of field. So it's going to look the same, but there are some key differences, and I think you'll find with rugby league that some of the hits, the way that the hits happen and the way that some of the athletic skills with the runs, with the passes, with the kicks, you might just see a little bit more of a showcasing of that. It just really, ups the ante a little bit from a rugby game.
Okay, so then let's get into the NFL a little bit.
Yeah.
How popular or not is the NFL right now in Australia?
Very popular. We've got a guy, Jordan Mailata, as you know, being Philadelphia, obviously Eagles left tackle. So he's a big deal over here because he was South Sydney Rabbitohs, who's playing at Vegas this weekend. He'll actually be in Vegas this week helping promote the games. And he's a big star. But we've had other guys, Adam Gotsis, Jesse Williams. Valentine Holmes is a player still playing in our competition. He went over and played with the Jets for a bit in the preseason. So we've got guys over there in and around, and we're hoping, I guess, for a few more as the years go on. And who knows, maybe some sort of alliance can work out with the NFL and the NRL, because I think it's 2 sports that amazingly are more similar than maybe it looks on first look.
So, okay, but let me get this straight. There's no tackle American football in Australia at all, is there?
There is. We have a competition, and some of the players have been involved in those. Like Jesse Williams played in that, I think, going into when he came into the NFL. So it does exist, but really our big sports are the ones that you mentioned when I'm talking football codes and NRL. I think people learning some of those skills in the NRL, they're the ones where, like Mailata, it's, okay, this could be transferable. The scouts coming out here going, all right, let's see what we got here and how can we transfer that for American football.
I've seen some video of Mailata running with the ball in Australia, playing rugby, and it is incredible. He told me once that he was like, I don't know, 340 maybe, 360, and they wanted him to come back at less than 300 pounds, and he's like, I'd have to cut off one of my legs. Like there's just no way. Refresh my memory on what kind of rugby player he was and why, did he leave because the NFL was just a bigger opportunity, or was it because he couldn't be quite the player in rugby? Because you just, they don't really have linemen in rugby, right?
No blocking, right? You can have block plays, but you can't block. So someone like yourself, Ross, you would have still been one of those big guys, but you would have had the ball in your hand. You'd have been running it. You'd have been trying to make some yardage and then quick play of the ball, then next player, and then maybe give it onto the skill positions on the next down or the one after that. So Mailata, similar sort of thing. And you saw the highlights where he could crash through guys. But obviously, if he was to go up the grades and start playing against the stronger defenders, he might have found that difficult to play at that length, because we play for 80 minutes, and like soccer, it's continuous. So playing for that extended period, you can be subbed up on and off, but there are restrictions with your substitutions. So someone like him would have to lose, I guess, some weight to try and get a bit more endurance.
Got it. Okay. So people, there is some tackle American football down there. I'm assuming there's a decent amount of soccer. So, like, how do you decide which one to play? Whether you play rugby league, rugby union, Aussie rules, soccer, American football. Feels like you guys are really like spreading out the talent among a bunch of different. I remember when I was down there, they called them codes, right?
Codes, yeah, that's right. And I think, I'm biased, obviously, being involved in NRL, but I'd be saying, play this sport. We've got so many versions of the game that you can play, kind of similar again to what NFL are doing with flag football. We've got our versions of touch, tag, and tackle, where you can get involved in the game. It's all ages. There's wheelchair rugby, amazingly enough. It's an incredible sport as well. And we've got our NRLW for our women's, which is all up on the big stage as well. So I'm biased, but I'm saying play this one. You'll love it.
So what's with Vegas this weekend? Like, why is the NRL going to Vegas? Why is Mailata going to be there? What's the
Rock's
thought process
be there
behind coming United States?
So it's the season opener, and as you know, I think it's going to be in Brazil for the NFL this year. So NRL following a similar, I guess, mindset, saying let's expand, let's take one of our first games or our first two games over to Vegas, playing at the same ground, obviously the same stadium, Allegiant Stadium, and they're going to be playing two games back to back. They're proper games, they're competitive games. We've got the Rabbitohs, South Sydney, and the Eagles. So people might know with Philadelphia, Manly, there's some similarities there. I tell you, we've got our own brothers, the Turbo brothers, we call them. They're not as famous, I guess, as the Kelsey brothers, because one of them's not dating a pop superstar. But you know what? They're similar in the sense one's the big man up front and the other one's the flashy, skillful guy. So Jake and Tom Trbojevic, check those guys out. And then we've got the Broncos and the Roosters. Now, these two teams, Sydney Roosters, kind of looking like a New York Giants, I guess, with their history, similar to Brisbane Broncos, like the Dallas Cowboys. So I think when you're talking real big franchises from our competition, you're going to see them on show, and they're two of the best teams in our competition.
How can I or anybody else watch it this weekend? Do you know?
Fox Sports 1 are going to be telecasting the games live, so 6:30 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. And if you're in the Vegas area, there's things happening all week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. On to Saturday is FanFest. As I said, Jordan Mailata and The Rock are going to be there on the FanFest on Thursday. There'll be some FanFest stuff and a tailgating experience on the Saturday. There's a golf day as well. So there's lots going on. And if you're down there, I'm sure that you'll be involved. You'll find a way to get involved. But the game's 6:30 and 8:30, Fox Sports 1. I recommend checking it out. See if you like it. And who knows, some of these players, they may come up again 2-3 years' time. You may be talking about them, and coming to America.
Wait, The Rock is going to be there?
He's going to be there. He's got a connection with rugby league going way back with his heritage, and he's been involved in the past, and they've managed to tell him to talk to him, and he's happy to come on board for this week. So it's pretty exciting. This is a free event on the Thursday. So get down there.
That's awesome. Would you say that American football, like the NFL, is becoming more popular in Australia?
Absolutely. I think what the NFL is doing at the moment is just becoming like a worldwide phenomenon. I know with your show, Ross, you reach a large amount of international audience, and I think that's something that the NFL's trying to do more of. And the way the game's played, the standard of the games, and just the fact that it's something that's year round, that even though the games are only played at a certain time of year, but there's popularity happening all the time, right? So combine, we're going to be doing our combine this week as well at Vegas. So we're sort of looking at those great ideas the NFL are doing and saying, hey, maybe we can do something like that for the NRL.
And then the last one I have for you, and maybe there's a follow-up to it, I don't know, but Paul, I know that there have been NFL teams that have studied rugby tackling because
Yes.
they're trying to keep their head out of it. I know the Seahawks, that was a big part of it, studying how they tackle to keep the head out of it for not only player safety, but penalties and all of that. How would you describe the difference between tackling in American football typically versus tackling in rugby? And what are they trying to like teach them?
So a lot of the tackling, there are certain wrestling techniques and there's ways to get guys to the ground. Now, as I was saying, the sport's continuous. So when you tackle a player, time doesn't stop. The play's continuing. You need to be able to have a little bit of time to get off the tackle player, but then that person's going to what we call play the ball, which is kind of like hiking it back to the dummy half, I guess, which would be like the quarterback taking the ball from the center, and then play continues. So a lot of that techniques around trying to get the player on their back, and where you'll find the big hits, they're trying to aim at the midpoint of the body, obviously not aiming at the head, not aiming too low, and you'll see that real underneath the rib cage. But there's a lot of emphasis at the moment on player safety, eliminating some of those ones where they're forceful to the head, because that's the obviously area in all our codes. We're trying to get player safety at the forefront.
Paul, really appreciate the time. Again, Paul Grzadka, he is a presenter and producer for the National Rugby League. They'll be playing in Vegas this weekend, including Jordan Mailata's former team. Jordan will be there. I cannot imagine trying to ever tackle Jordan Mailata. No, thank you. The Rock will be there. It's awesome. Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Ross. Awesome stuff.
Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Paul. Think about it. I could have been born in Australia, and maybe I wouldn't have been an American football player. I probably almost certainly wouldn't have been. Maybe I'd have been a rugby league guy. I don't know. Man, it's hard if it's continuous like that to be that big. I don't know if I would have been able to make it as a rugby league. I think the biggest you can be is probably like a tight end, D end. I don't know if there's a lot of O-line D tackles out there playing rugby league. Thank goodness I was born in the United States, and thank goodness for westshorehome.com/Ross. You guys know how I feel about this company. One of the things I love about it, he's a listener. I know the owner now. He's a listener. So it's so cool to me that we have listeners like him and like some of you that actually have companies that you can advertise on the show, and they're awesome companies. Whether you need a new bathroom or shower, and everybody should at least consider it. Unless you have like a brand new house, you probably could use an upgrade for your shower or bathtub. Or how about a door? I had no idea how happy a new door would make my wife. I really did not. It's unbelievable. I'm like the star of the house. I don't know how long it'll last, but I'm like the star of the house right now. westshorehome.com/Ross. westshorehome.com/Ross. Remember, you can see my house, you can see the different work I've had done, and you can sign up to get the free estimate. So at least you know if you ever want to do something, how to do it. I forgot to give my patron of the day, by the way. Patreon.com/RT Media. That is Andrew Harms.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross. Lions special teamer Jalen Reeves-Maybin, he has signed a record 2-year, $7.5 million extension.
I love this. I love stuff like this. You know, we don't talk about special teams very often. We don't talk about special teamers very often, which is one reason, by the way, I'm happy that Devin Hester got into the Hall of Fame. I like when we talk about Steve Tasker and Brian Mitchell. I like that we celebrated Matthew Slater a little bit. That is not for the faint of heart. Special teams are no joke. And I am very impressed by a guy like Reeves-Maybin, who makes a significant difference for the Detroit Lions as a special teamer. That's an important phase of the game, maybe less important than it used to be, but it still counts. It's still yardage. It still matters. And as a guy that played on some special teams, I can tell you that is serious, serious business. I mean, those guys are playing for keeps. So congratulations to Jalen Reeves-Maben. To get that kind of guaranteed money, that kind of signing bonus for a special teams player, that's great. I like when you raise the bar for any position out there, especially a position that puts their body on the line as much as a special teamer.
Couple roster moves. The Bucks, they released edge rusher Shaq Barrett. The Jets released Laken Tomlinson. And the Falcons, they released Jonnu Smith. Teams are just continuing to free up cap space as we get closer to free agency.
Yep, it's that time of year. Man, they must really not want the guys if they're going to do something like this, right? I mean, with the cap going up as much as it did and going up like 12 million more than a lot of these teams anticipated, for them to move on from Barrett or Tomlinson or Jonnu Smith or whoever, they don't think the player's worth that money, right? It's not like they need to free up cap space as much as they just don't want to pay that guy that much money. They don't think he's worth it.
Legendary NFL writer Peter King, he announced he is retiring from sports writing after 40-plus years at age 66.
And that happened, Jack, shortly after we recorded Monday's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. So I didn't really get a chance to talk about it on that show, but I did promise on social media at Ross Tucker NFL that I would talk about it more today. So I'm actually going to make it my Labatt take. Presented by Labatt Blue Light, the pristine Canadian Pilsner. Enjoy your beers together so you can live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. So it was 2007, and I was walking out of the Washington football facility. I looked over in the media room, and I saw Peter King sitting there. I thought, okay. Walked out of the building. I took maybe 4 or 5 steps to my car, and I had this idea about writing, about being a current player or at some point a former player that actually wrote about football. I like writing. And instead of continuing to walk to my car, I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to tell him. I walked back into the facility. I walked into the room where all the beat writers were. No players ever do that. I introduced myself to Peter King. I said, hi, Peter. My name's Ross Tucker, and I'm interested in writing someday about the NFL. He loved the idea. We ended up meeting up together to talk about it. Next thing I know, I hurt my neck. My career's over. I write his Monday morning quarterback column. And within 2 weeks, even though I was on injured reserve for Washington, I had job offers from Sports Illustrated, from Sirius, from Comcast. And those jobs led to getting more jobs. So I can honestly say that Peter King changed my life. Can't thank him enough for that opportunity. I mean, how many people can you really say in life change your life? So thank you, Peter, so much from the bottom of my heart. And like I always tell people, the lesson there, when in doubt, do it. I wasn't sure whether or not I should go in and tell him. I wasn't sure whether or not I should go back into the facility and introduce myself. When in doubt, do it. Thank you, Peter.
A lot of coaches and general managers were talking at the Combine this week, and I know there was a couple comments that did jump out to you there, Ross.
No question. I mean, I feel like after all these years, Jack, I'm pretty good at speaking NFLese. Like for Sean Payton to say we haven't made a decision on Russell Wilson yet, but then he says, I got to make sure that guy with the jersey that the next one he's not crossing out. Well, if it's the next one, then you're not keeping Russell Wilson, right? You're talking about who the next guy is going to be. Or even Ryan Poles saying 3 times or whatever, if we end up trading Justin, we want to do right by him. I'm pretty sure you don't say that unless you're going to trade Justin. So hopefully some of you guys have learned over the years to be able to read the tea leaves a little bit like I can now.
And Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., he's not participating in any drills at either the Combine or his pro day.
You know what, though? Whether you're hosting game day or movie night, DiGiorno knows that planning a watch party on a budget isn't easy. You need the perfect setting, perfect squad, perfect eats. Luckily, you're a game time mastermind, and you know that grabbing DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza can bring home a dub because it's packed with half a pound of cheese sauce, other toppings comes at an incredible price. Make the game-winning call. Grab a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza from the grocery store today. It's not delivery. It's DiGiorno. Love me some Labatt Blue Light. Drink some Labatt Blue Lights with your friends. Live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. I'll actually have more to say about Marvin Harrison now participating on tomorrow's show. It's called a little tease in the business. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. You guys know how I feel about it. It's the best gift you could give anyone, but especially like a mom, a dad, a grandparent. Before it's too late, give them the front page treatment they deserve. BackOfficeScheduler.com, SteakhouseSports.com, HumanHeadNYC.com, Sporticulture, and Pizza Boy Brewing.